Ambassador DUCARU, thanks for joining this panel. We'll have the next speakers coming in a few minutes. They are on the way, but better we'll start this panel. I would dive in straightly to the topic of this panel. And it was early this morning when I have started to review the previous editions of this forum. And one of the main ideas that come into my mind is the fact that security has suffered a tremendous transformation, the concepts of security. Basically, all the previous editions of this forum had a cyber panel and a technology threats panel. And one of the ideas that come into my mind is the fact that we were to signal that there is no more geopolitics itself. It is also technology geopolitics. Also, technology is shaping the threat landscape into a great extent. So in this way, we have recognized that the security is increasingly shaped by disruptive technologies, and also data and resilience is shaping the threat landscape. In the same way, the main idea is that we have witnessed over the years a profound transformation of the concept of the security. Basically, according to this, there is space for technology to have an influence on the strategic competition. Bearing in mind the idea of strategic competition, there is a question that came to my mind before this panel, also during the talks with Ambassador DUCARU. What, in a broader sense, what Europe should do, and especially we, the countries in our region, in order to build resilience in this new context of technology and security? The first speaker of this panel has a broad experience, both at NATO and EU level, as Assistant Secretary General of NATO, former director of US Satellite Center, and right now serving as advisor on AI and EDTs at the European External Action Service. So, Ambassador DUCARU, based on your experience, your previous experience, how can cybersecurity cooperation be better integrated both at EU and NATO level? And the second question, according to your role that you're having right now, how EDTs are shaping the threat landscape and also the strategic competition? Ambassador DUCARU, please.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be back home, not just in Romania, but also the new strategy center, where I'm very proud to hold an honorary position as honorary chair of the scientific board. If you allow me, I will start with your second question because it's more general, and then I will come to cyber security. And when addressing the impact of emerging disruptive technologies, the famous EDTs, as they are now coined, upon security, defense, the threat landscape, I would say that it's not necessarily new in history that technology, especially the disruptive technology, is impacting not just economy, so they have a direct impact of our geoeconomics, but also a strong impact upon geopolitics, security, and defense. This happened in history all the time because in the theory of international relations, technological leap is a resource of power, yeah, in the balance of global power. And if you look back in history, from gunpowder to using air power to the space race and so on, they have, of course, nuclear age, they have all impacted significantly the security and defense area. But there's something fundamentally different with the technology wave right now that we need to have in mind, take into consideration. And it has to do with the speed of advancement in technology, the scale of impact, the depth, and the fact that it's overwhelmingly driven by private initiative. Unlike the past, where the major technological breakthroughs were frankly the results of significant government financing. Well, take the Manhattan Project, the nuclear age. Even the internet was initially a DARPA project, the project of the Defense Research Agency of the Pentagon, and many others. So this time, actually, the innovation from the private sector spread so fast into the military domain that implies that I would say one of the essential responsibility of a state in the Westphalian model, namely having the monopoly of the power that can be, of using technology even by deploying violence, but then controlling this in order to assure stability. The new technologies can spread much faster because they're not originated and they're not under the control of any of the governments. It's very interesting to consider how this impacts, for example, the arms control regime. And now I'm coming to your question, the threat landscape. It's very varied also because the type of confrontation in the last decades has changed in the sense of blurring the, I would say, demarcation line between peace and war. Cyber is a great example, or the information warfare, in the sense that there are military grade, for example, PSYOPs techniques in the information warfare that are thrown to civilians. Unlike the typical approach where you want to create an impact upon fighting forces in uniform or so on. The new threats affect first and foremost the resilience of societies, and then they can affect tremendously the foundations of national security, including military security. I think we are in an area where, and by the way, I'm a technology optimist. I'm a geek. Let's be very clear. But I'm one of those who is also significantly concerned of the danger of mishandling this. There are two quite recent books that I like to refer to. One is by Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt, the former head of Google, CEO of Google, The Age of AI, which actually makes a great link between what the AI wave and revolution means for geopolitics and how it changes the approaches, including deterrence or escalation mechanism and techniques. And the other one is the coming wave by Mustafa Suleiman, who created DeepMind and now works also at Google, and who expresses this concern of the difficulty to contain technology like AI in such a way that it remains mainly a force for good, because they're always a trade-off. So what I consider it's important and immensely useful is to, in order to keep up with the dynamics of the evolution of the technologies, to look to, or to create what I would call threat observatories of emerging technology, especially AI, but also others. And this can be, or should be done in a kind of sieve mill approach, because you need to include private sector and the geeks to watch what the impact could be. And then, of course, you need to have the military people to really see the link upon security and defense. The other interesting aspect that is worth to highlight, and you actually hinted to, is there is a new, I would say, conceptual domain in international relations that is developed, tech geopolitics. It's geopolitics in general, then the aspect of impact of technologies upon geoeconomics. And right now, because of this development, there is also a new discipline linked to diplomacy. You know, there was, it started with cyber diplomacy, and many of the countries who were in the lead developed the so-called cyber ambassadors and so on. Then it evolved towards digital diplomacy. By the way, in the European Union, there is also a digital diplomacy network where there is a kind of monthly interaction among all the responsibilities. I think the concept should move to the much broader and encompassing tech diplomacy, because we're actually speaking about tech geopolitics. Of course, the digital domain is key, but there's fast advances beyond digital, like the quantum technologies. Quantum sensing, for example, has become mature and generates direct impact upon capability development for the military. So, and now coming back to your initial questions, what more can be done for cyber security cooperation? I think what people understood after the first shocks of you know, absorbing some cyber attacks is that no one can address this alone. I was working at NATO for both as my country's ambassadors for 6 years, and then also in the international secretariat for another 4 years and a half. And the main focus at that time was to create, number one, a mechanism of secure and seamless communication among all allies. Number two, to establish some essential standards for cyber security, and they were introduced in the defense planning process, the famous NATO process, where capabilities are kind of agreed by each member. But I think the breakthrough was when NATO understood that there has to be a wider partnership that should include industry, and it established a specific or dedicated cyber partnership. It was called the NICP, NATO Industry Cyber Partnership, separate from the partnership with industry that had been developed over decades in the procurement sector. And then last but not least, also the relationships with other organizations like EU. The first, I would say, NATO-EU agreement in after the year 2000 was actually in the cyber domain, and then also cooperation with other organizations, with UN, OEC, and so on. So this aspect is absolutely key. This is cannot just be a government-owned subject. It's definitely should be shared in the multi-stakeholder approach with the private sector, and also with the think tanks and academia. I will end with one last interesting aspect, namely that in 2018 at the first Paris Peace Summit, which was the anniversary of 100 years since the end of the First World War, for the first time kind of multi-stakeholder document has been launched. It was the Paris Call on Cyber Stability, and it was the first document which was first signed by a number of states, so legitimate international actors. I think in the first tranche about 55, plus in the first tranche about 120 industry stakeholders, and then other stakeholders from the civil society, think tank community, and so on. And it was useful because it has supported a trend of actions that was meant to support responsible behavior in cyberspace. And then some of the member states or organizations developed also some kind of enforcement mechanism. The EU developed the so-called cyber diplomacy toolbox, so kind of set of sanctions that are supposed to be imposed against those who are breaking the norms of responsible behavior. And then in NATO and the US is speaking about kind of cyber deterrence package, which goes beyond just economic or diplomatic sanctions. The EU, it also considers potential, I would say, cyber attack or retaliation measures. So I would stop here to your two questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So as you can see, no one is late when we are talking about cyber. We have two panelists that have arrived to the traffic congestion. I would like to welcome them, Director General of Romanian Cybersecurity Directorate, Dan Câmpean, and also Professor BJOLA, Corneliu BJOLA from Oxford University, Associate Professor. I'll start and I'll try to connect the discussion that we had by the time you arrived. And I would start with Dan Câmpean. You have somehow pioneered the institutional transformation here in Romania. What do I mean? We had years ago a national CERT, Romanian national CERT, and in your time it was transformed into a genuine cybersecurity authority. We are discussing by the time you arrived, about the challenges that we faced in order to build resilience, to create a more resilient Black Sea region and also Europe. What's your take regarding building resilience? What do we need? Stronger institutions, stronger legal frameworks, better capabilities. What do you think?
Thank you so much, Iulian. You said it all, actually. First of all, allow me to apologize for the delay. It took ages to get from the airport to here, but I'm super glad and honored to be here. Now, what it takes, first of all, to understand that we are living in an unbelievably interconnected world. So we depend on each other, we depend on our business partners, on our suppliers. We depend on technology providers. We depend on actionable intelligence and actionable information, in particular when it comes to digital infrastructures. So, also let's not forget, and it started during the pandemics, the speed of technology adoption increased. It's not me saying that, it's Gardner and a couple of other analysts saying that the speed of adopting new technologies increased 6-7 times compared with the pre-pandemics time. So, in the way we see it from the Romanian Cyber Directorate, attack surface continuously expanding. When we look from organization perspective, from sector perspective, nationally, and just to give you some figures that worries me a lot, 12 million daily internet users in Romania, all of us with devices in our pockets, with laptops and tablets and so on in our briefcases, 500,000 small and medium enterprises with very, very low maturity, doing hyper-accelerated adoption of solutions because their friend and their spouse says, this is a cool app, you should install it, or we should try this, or we should try that. So it's an attack surface continuously increasing. Now, what we don't see an exponential increase of the cyber incidents. But we see, of course, it's a sustained increase. We see sophistication. We see the speed from the moment one vulnerability is detected in my infrastructure, in your infrastructure, up to the moment it's fully exploited and weaponized, whatever software and whatever malware they are using. This shrunk from years, and that was in the 90s, it was years, then to months, and now the last figures I saw last week, 29 minutes. That's the average. So be ready that from the moment one vulnerability is sniffed, is detected in whatever type of technology and infrastructure we are using, someone, with or without AI, but most likely using AI to accelerate this, will identify the practical way on how to hack in, how to get persistence, how to do lateral movement, how to exfiltrate data, how to do any kind of damage you can imagine. Now, what it takes, I truly believe, and that's my vision, cybersecurity, it's a sport team. It's a domain where, first of all, it's transversal. It's a bit embedded in everything. It's not the big dog on the stage. It's not the prime actor in any organization. It's perceived as a kind of cost center, which it is, support function. But nevertheless, it's embedded everywhere. It's a team sport. When I mean team sport, means you need brains, you need expertise, you need multiple people, multiple teams, suppliers and regulatory authorities alike, and technology providers in any way, form and shape to really work together. What we see now it's that, of course, we tend to react. We have an incident and then we start throwing budgets and hiring teams and buying solutions and getting consultants on board, still reactive mode. Although we know very well, the ones of you that are medical doctors, you know it's easier to prevent than to treat disease or illness or virus or whatever. And goes the same for informatic viruses. Now, to build resilience, it's important, as I said also at the beginning, to acknowledge that we are not working in isolation. There are dependencies. It's so complex now that it's extremely difficult for one expert to get a good understanding of what are we dealing with. And ask a fair and honest question to your IT colleagues. Ask them if they know and they have a full inventory of all the devices they have to manage. That's a big problem. We don't know what we are defending. So we don't have a list of machines, of servers, or devices in any way that we should try to defend. Then it depends a lot on the quality of the people involved. And let me say a bit about this, because that's another big concern. We are lacking experts. Our estimation, Romania level, we are lacking probably in the range of 2,500, maybe a bit more, experts. When I mean experts, people with years of expertise. We're not talking about junior profiles. And AI or non-AI, you cannot compensate for that. And we are in good shape compared with the rest of European Union. The figures I saw from European Commission, 500,000 cyber experts lacking right now at the level of European Union, and about 5 million globally. So that's massive, that's serious. But there is hope, I will tell you about this. So one last point I wanted to mention, resilience, because you mentioned regulatory. The big pain in the back we have is that regulatory environment, it's always 1 to 3, 5 years behind the technology. So now we have the AI. We don't have regulatory measures on cyber related to AI, for example. And whatever new technology will pop up will take years, first for us to try to understand that new tech, and then to figure out what kind of regulatory measures we may need. But I have to say that because it's my job, we are big fans of regulatory measures. I mean, we cannot live in a world with absolutely no norms and absolutely no measures. On the other hand, they must be smart, so they don't kill innovation, they don't kill businesses, and they don't offer possibility for, let's say, legitimate people, legitimate teams, legitimate interests to bypass those norms. Because the bad guys, they don't play by the book, they don't care about rules, and they will do whatever they want anyway.
Thank you very much, Dan, for your takes on these topics that I proposed to you. You've mentioned, you've talked about technology adoption at some point, and I would connect the dots with the last part of your speech where you said that there is hope. That's very encouraging, and thank you for this. It is a great takeaway that should introduce the topics and the subject for the next speaker. The next speaker, I would like to tell you that has many contributions, books and articles on counter-propaganda, on combating and fighting disinformation in the digital age, and also is a well-known expert both here nationally and internationally. Corneliu, BJOLA, Associate Professor at Oxford University. There is Professor of Digital Diplomacy, sorry. There is a question that I proposed to you before this panel, and I would like to address here. How can our democracy can cope and can move on with in the age of agentic influence and algorithmic influence? What do you think?
Thank you very much for the invitation. Apologies for arriving late. The same problem with traffic congestion. It took forever to come here. The question is relevant, especially in the current context. And let me start with an observation. So I think in both policy circles, academic circles, we've been talking about the arrival of AI and the fact that it's going to change the character of war, the character of warfare. Well, I think now in 2016, I think we have fully entered into this age. And we have two pieces of evidence, the conflict in Venezuela and the conflict in Iran. In both cases, we see the deployment of AI, integrated AI, in the conduct of these two military interventions. A bit of information from the media, but also from think tanks, some reports, and they both point to this connection that Pentagon has made with Palantir, a famous company of Peter Thiel, and of course, through certain instruments like the Maven smart system. A Maven, which is an older project, which was established in 2016, first with Google, Palantir took over later. Maven is amazing from a certain perspective. What Maven does, it ingests data from about 150 sources. We are talking about satellite data, talking about social media, talking about signal intercepts. And what it does, then it produces targeting recommendations. And this is an amazing aspect where AI comes into play. 1,000 targeting recommendation per hour. That's a big difference. And not only targeting recommendation, but also it suggests what kind of weapons to be used to hit that particular target and what is the optimal execution course and timing. By the way, NATO also acquired Maven, a smart system, last year in February. I don't know how much it was integrated. So it has been used in Venezuela. Also, the translation done simultaneously in the case of Spanish or Farsi. So why do I mention Maven here? Because we see the deployment of AI in kinetic warfare. And the parallel that I'm making is that just a matter of time before a similar Palantir instrument is going to be applied to hybrid warfare. We don't know yet whether, Palantir is developing or other countries are developing, but we should start thinking about this because AI is going to be deployed in hybrid warfare. Now, what I mean by hybrid warfare, because there are many definitions. So the one that I prefer to use is to talk about strategic exhaustion of a particular state through a range of actions under the threshold of conventional warfare. And by range of actions, we have to think cybersecurity is one, information warfare is another one, weaponization of migration is another type of hybrid warfare. Talking about assassination, sabotage. Already we've seen the numbers increasing, especially in Europe in the past 3 years. So we have a range of actions, all separately under the threshold of conventional warfare, but all aim to exert this cumulative strategic pressure to exhaust the adversary, to paralyze his decision-making, produce what is now called cognitive exhaustion in a society, which has direct connection to democratic resilience. So where is AI coming into this picture? I think it comes into 3 areas. A possible use, right? First of all, it's about mapping the informational environment. In the same way in which Palantir now extracts information from 150 sources to produce this kind of targeting recommendations, I think the same way we have to think about how to map your informational space. The question is not to do the fact-checking. Fact-checking is so 2014. What it's important to understand is how stories are planted, how do they originate, what is the possibility of going viral, what is the connection, in a sense, to different type of stories, which is original, which is organic, meaning, citizens that have the right to express themselves. So here is more about understanding, mapping very well the informational space. AI, in principle, and, I've seen attempts to do this in some European countries. The second aspect, which I think is also important, is to connect the domains, to connect the dots. When you have a sabotage, when you have an assassination, is that a separate act or is something more? Give an example, for instance, the drone attack in Poland in September, 10th of September 2025. 19 drones crossing the space into space of Poland. 5 they managed to take them down. But what was important in that particular attack was not only the flight of the drones, it was also the information campaign that took place the same night. The same night you have a massive disinformation campaign taking place on social media, telling Polish citizens the drones could be Ukrainian or could be coming from NATO. surprise, surprise, the next day there was a poll saying that 30%, speaking about cognitive confusion and exhaustion, 30% of the Polish citizens believed they were confused about the origins of the drones. 30% is big. This is a successful disinformation campaign. In every society, you have about 10%, statistically speaking, of people believing in conspiracies. You cannot, that's people who, it varies from country to country. When you have 30%, this is a success, because then the next time when you have a drone attack, the decision maker, if there is pressure from below, they will be careful not to react to certain drones. So always when you have something kinetic, there is also this information coming that comes along. So where artificial intelligence also plays a big role is to connect the dots. Connect the dots before the event. The third element, which I think is also important with AI, is to understand thresholds, to evaluate thresholds. So each act separately says, look, there is no case for Article 5 or EU article now. But have also to understand that, example with drone attacks, is that when you have an adversary, a hostile adversary, let's try to push to see how much it can go without reaction. I'm going to send 19 drones. Let's see if I can reach the Baltic Sea. Let's see how much time the other side, will take to take them down. Let's see how many Polish citizens will believe my story. So there is a question about estimating threshold, in the sense that, to what extent certain actions, which are, the other side trying to press more and more, could become problematic. Again, this is where AI modeling is important. So combining these three elements, you can reach or define some sort of a palantir for hybrid warfare. And I think this is a key element. I'm going to talk more about this in a session in the afternoon. But this is something important, how AI help one to understand better what is hitting you, from what direction. It's not only about drones. It always comes with different. The case of migration, weaponization of migration is important as well. We can think about all kinds of scenarios. Sabotage, the same. It's not only the sabotage, it's what it tries to plant through the stories, to the distrust in institutions, that type of action that could be damaging. These elements together create strategic cumulative pressure on the state. Right? It creates this kind of strategic exhaustion to the point that you are not able to cope. Your decision making is paralyzed. You don't react or avoid to react. You concede the initiative. So that's part of what happens in a hybrid warfare, as I mentioned. So resilience in this case, I think AI could help, properly done. In a case, in a situation in which you try to respect the democratic rule, but also not to concede exactly your information, digital, technological sovereignty, there are different terms that are being used, being exposed and undermined by adversaries, whether they are state or non-state actors.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor, for your very valuable insights on this topic of building democratic resilience, making our democratic states more stronger. I pretty much value the fact that you have mentioned the concept of strategic exhaustion in the context of this discussion that we had. This is a very good starting point to discuss further on. I see that we have some almost 9 minutes to go, and I would kindly address the audience to add some questions for our distinguished panelists here today, and I pretty encourage you to do this if there are any, and I see that there may be any. Yeah, please. Please state your name and also who do you address the question to. Thank you.
My name is Răzvan Ciuca. I'm an External Relations expert at the New Strategy Center focusing on researching topics gathering around cyber politics, cyber diplomacy approaches among states. I have two questions, but first of all, I would like to congratulate all the speakers for their valuable insights presented as part of this panel. My first question is addressed to all the speakers, and my second question will be addressed specifically to Mr. Corneliu BJOLA. The first question, we are witnessing a conceptual shift from cyber deterrence, which most of the time tends to be associated with the active cyber defense toolkit, which, as you might know, is part of the proactive offensive cyber security spectrum, towards societal resilience, apropos to what Mr. CîMPEAN has previously mentioned. Do you believe that resilience has become the new form of deterrence in cyberspace? You can answer to that question. Afterwards, I'm going to address the second question to Mr. Professor BJOLA.
Okay, I start.
Resilience is, in general, a type of deterrence. I mean, there are two types. Is deterrence through denial. Yeah, you deny the adversary the results of the objectives that he has set or he would set through some attack, and how you do it by absorbing the attack, being resilient. The other part is resilience through punishment, which is best, I would say, represented like in the nuclear deterrence theory. The difficulty of using deterrence through punishment in the cyber domain comes from the fact that in order to change the calculation of the adversary, not to attack because you have the capacity to fight back and then bring up. In the conventional and in the nuclear domain, you can show off your capacity. Yeah, in conventional terms, there are calibers of munitions, of the mother of all bombs, or the kilotons of nuclear weapons and so on. In cyber, you cannot show off your cyber tools. They are much more stealthy. It's like you show them off, you might lose them. So it's very difficult to use the same analogy, although there has been some example of using deterrence through punishment also in the cyber domain, especially with the US doctrine of the so-called persistent cyber engagement that was launched under the previous national security agency head Nakasone. This was after the Russians entered the systems, famous 2016 elections, and after all this analysis, the idea was, okay, why not come with a strategy whereby we are keeping the adversaries busy in their own systems, also show some of the potential and actually discourage them to continue with attacks. Joseph Nye, who has addressed this aspect, he introduces two new types of deterrence in cyber. One, the deterrence through entanglement, and the other one is deterrence through norms, which I think theoretically are sound, but you can see there in practice they're not necessarily working so well. The adversary would not attack you because he's entangled with you through the network. It's yes and no. The Chinese have developed some more independent. They can shut down from the rest of the world, or internet can be balkanized or shut down in areas. And then the deterrence through norms, Naya was saying, well, some states would want to keep their reputation of responsible behavior in the international environment. That's why this developing such norms and so on would in itself generate some inhibition, some deterrence. So it's a complex view. I think the strongest dimension right now and the strongest investment and important is in resilience, but there is a threshold, there is a law of diminishing returns that you invest in deterrence, but then you have to invest so much in order to have the extra inch of cybersecurity that you cannot do it. In the banking system, they use insurance up to that threshold, and in the security terms, I think there will be more ways to showcase cyber potential through concrete action, through offensive actions. Yeah.
Right now, I'd like to move to the second question, because we are running almost out of time. So please, Răzvan.
In the context of the hottest topic at the forum, basically strategic competition in the Black Sea region, do you, Mr. BJOLA, believe that small and medium powers in Eastern Europe can still act as entrepreneurs in the fields of cyber and AI? Or will the normative architecture be shaped exclusively by major powers and large technology companies, given, Jan Bremer's technopolar moment?
Thank you very much.
It's a very important question here about the capability states need to develop in order to be competitive, right, strategically speaking, in this domain. And this is a question that I think has to be, or at least the debate in Romania needs to start. I suggested that several times, especially in the field of AI. Things are far away from where it's supposed to be. So what you can do in capability building is that you need to develop, coalitions. I mean, there is some capacity, right? I mean, in terms of NATO, in terms of EU, but you need to develop capacity. In the field of hybrid warfare, I think this is quite important to understand another element which relates to the first question. I don't think a hybrid warfare can be won only on defense, only by resilience. Resilience is important. You want to make sure that you resist several shocks, but it's also very costly because all the time you react, you consider initiative, you react to certain things that are placed in front of you. That's very resource intensive. So what you need, and this is where probably capacity building and also a strategy has to be integrated, is to need to go on offense. I mean hybrid warfare. Cybersecurity is a bit complicated for the reason that you mentioned. You don't want to reveal your hand. You want to keep certain instruments hidden because, But in hybrid warfare, especially information warfare and other action, you need to be able to create some sort of deterrent to make it as costly as possible for the adversary to conduct this operation against you. How you do that? This is where we talk about capacity building, especially with this kind of new tools and technology. Ambassador DUCARU also mentioned quantum. Quantum is around the corner. It's very important. It's crucially important, especially with decryption, but also with sensing and GPS. So that's another element that has to be introduced in the technological stack when you think about building this kind of capacity. And the third element, which I think is also important, Ambassador DUCARU probably knows about this, are the satellite, the space, both low orbit and high orbit. We don't have time to discuss it, but satellite, as you've seen in the case of Ukraine, but also through the Starlink network, these are critical infrastructure that you need to bring together, technologically speaking, to develop that type of multi-layered technological shield, so to speak. But I'm going to stop here. My key point, and I want to repeat this because I keep pressing on this publicly, and not only, hybrid warfare cannot be successfully conducted only on defense. Resilience, it's one thing, but you have to think more strategically about how to go on offense.
Thank you very much, Professor. I hope the question was addressed accordingly. As I see here Director Scutaru waving at us, I would like to add some concluding remarks and also to thank the distinguished speakers for being present here and for giving to the audience their insights. It seems clear for me that technology is no more complementary to geopolitics. Technology is geopolitics. And this is the key takeaway that we should address in the next period of time. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you and see you next time.